Thank you for choosing to attend this session of the series titled We Are All Related. We Are All Related Planning Committee, Susie Wright, Luann Brown, and myself wish to especially thank Dr. Sherry Warren and Christine, who likes to be called Chris, Kammler, for accepting our invitation to share with us today. Luann Brown regrets that she will not be joining us, and she sends her regrets. The Planning Committee has not determined the date for our next session, and we will let you know soon. We Are All Related Speaker Series provides opportunities to deepen relationships with people of diverse populations, cultures, and backgrounds as stepping stones to establishing connections with various speakers and valuing their wisdom in their journey, inspired by our directional statement number 2. For today's session, there will be an opening by Chris Kammler. Susie Wright will then introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Sherry Warren. Susie will lead a question and answer period following Dr. Sherry's sharing. Then Chris will close our session. So take a deep breath, just relax, and let's begin. Christine Kammler is a writer, director, performance artist, and a drama therapist working in mental health. She lives in Berkeley, California, on the homeland of the Ohlone. She will open today's session with a reading of her poem titled Crone Mother Blessing. I asked Susie that we take a pause after her reading before introducing our speaker for today. When I called Chris to ask permission to use her poem, she gave it some thought and took the invitation as sacred and called me back and said she was thinking of taking off work to be able to be with us today. So I especially thank you, Chris, for your generosity, but also for your gift of writing. Chris, will you share your poem with us now?
Okay. Crone Mother Blessing. Bless the stars pirouetting above the rain clouds tucked under the blue forever blue sky, and the rain drenching our parched world, water of rivers, water of waves, teacups and tears. Bless the baby's cry, announcing their place in the swirl of life. Bless the stranger's gaze, may it harbor friendship and acceptance given and received. Bless true friends, may we continue traveling roads, winding up mountains and through ancient forests, searching, seeking. Bless the hard times that give us grit and resolve we did not know we possessed. Bless the turbulence that descends on our heads, even when we are ever watchful. May we be protected. May we be supported. May we be safe. Bless the conquered and the conquerors, that they may cease their fire, that our leaders, ignorant, greedy, malevolent, be struck by a bolt of enlightenment. Bless the hands who bring food, who bring water, who bring solace. May their families be blessed. May your children and future children be blessed. May the ancestors bless you with always having enough to nourish and share. May we be blessed with a strong heart. May we be blessed with an open-heartedness where love in all its fractal forms pulses until it doesn't. May it be so. May it be so. And so it is.
Pat said to you all, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you, Christine, for sharing that with us. And thank you to Sherry Warren, who is our speaker today. Sherry is well known by some of us. Sherry is a BVM associate. She is also Dr. Sherry Warren, MSW, PhD, with the National Minister of Women's and Gender Justice for the United Church of Christ. She served at Clark University for 3 years, an assistant professor in social work, and then joined the faculty at the University of Wisconsin in Green Bay for 3 years. And she just seems to be moving across country because now she currently works in Akron. While working at Clark, she was able to work with the BVMs to accompany some of her students to the Commission on the Status of Women at the UN, where she learned more about the needs of women and girls all over the planet. Her experiences with CSW have been integral in her development and role in this newly revitalized position with the UCC. Her work is closely aligned with both congregational directional statements, both our one on spirituality and our one on inequality, and we are thrilled to have her with us today. And so, Sherry, if you would like to begin, we would love to hear from you.
Hi, thank you so much, Susie, for that warm welcome and introduction. And Chris, thank you for your beautiful words.
My pleasure.
So, may it be so. I'm going to apologize in advance. My husband is downstairs watching his beloved Detroit Lions, and he is pretty loud at times. So, hopefully, he will not swear too much. Hopefully, he won't have reason to swear too much.
Yes.
So as Susie said, I work for the National Ministries of the United Church of Christ, and my newly revitalized position is called Minister for Women's and Gender Justice. I say newly revitalized because we haven't had anyone doing this work at the national level for over 5 years. And many years ago, we had a whole office full of people devoted to the issues that affect women and girls specifically. And funding seems to have really changed how it is that we are able to do that work. So in 2022, I started this position and have been trying to carve out really what it is that I can be doing to try to connect all of the members of the United Church of Christ across the country and around the world. Now, as Susie said, I was involved with the Commission on the Status of Women while I was at Clark. And Clark was my first faculty position while I was still a doctoral student at University of Kansas. And I could not have asked for a better introduction to what academia is like. And I have fond memories of my colleagues at Clark who I'm still very much in touch with. Some of you heard me say I couldn't wait to get back down to Dubuque to have a good visit, catch up with people, quaff a pint down at Jubex, and just spend some time hanging around at Mount Carmel as well. I really miss the connections I made in Dubuque. One of those connections, though, was that I, as a faculty member in the social work department, was asked if I could try to organize some students and work with BVMs and get us to CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations. It's the, I believe, second largest commission that is held by the United Nations at the location in New York City. And it brings tens of thousands of people into New York every March. The timing is terrible. We actually had to cancel it one day because of an ice storm that was like inches of snow cone ice falling from the sky. And we were all trapped in our hotels. Terrible time of year to have it, but good if you're an academic because sometimes it lines up with spring break. Even if it doesn't, you still have access to students. And so I was able to take students from the social work program to the UN and watch their lives get changed while my own life was being changed by the work that I was witnessing and learning about. And I'm going to ask Mary Martins and Roberta White to pipe in here because I can't quite remember how this happened. And I can't remember if it was my first CSW or if it was my second CSW, taking students, going to so many different workshops and speakers and events at the United Nations. And we were having, some of us were having lunch one day in an Italian restaurant. And I think Kim Emery, if I got her name right, was there. She's an associate and she used to be one of the organizers of We Associates. Somehow it came up. Mary, are you piping
Yeah.
in?
I am. It's Kimberly Emery, and she's still at work in justice areas.
Yeah, she seems to be doing a lot of work with worker rights.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So we're sitting there having a lunch not too far from the UN, and I think it might have been Kimberly who said, Sherry, have you ever thought about becoming a BVM associate? And I said, I have, but I'm not Catholic. And that's when I learned the most amazing news, that I didn't have to be Catholic, that you all would accept me anyway. And so when I got back to Dubuque, I think it was the next school year, Mary Martins became my companion and started walking me through learning about what BVM associate status meant and the history of the BVMs. And I just fell more and more in love with the community. I don't know what year that was, but then the pandemic happened and I wasn't really able to get to Dubuque very much. And I had moved to Green Bay by then and was finishing my dissertation. And lo and behold, this job came open as I was moving from Green Bay to Akron. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do as I was uniting my household with someone I had known a long, long time ago through church work. And we kind of fell in love in a long distance way through the pandemic and united our households in Akron, Ohio. And it just so happened that the United Church of Christ's national offices are in Cleveland. So I stepped into this role. My PhD is in social welfare, but I also have a graduate certificate in women and gender studies. So if you could get a minor in graduate school, it would be like that. And because of the CSW and the BVMs supporting me to get involved in those things, I really became very interested about inequalities that girls and women around the world experience and how we could address those inequalities through both macro or policy and system level work, as well as in the more individualized mercy work, as I call it. So I often use the story of the babies in the river. We definitely need people pulling those babies out of the river and taking care of them. We also need folks going upriver to figure out why the heck the babies are getting in the river to begin with. And I like to work at both of those levels. So that's one of the things that I did a great deal of when I was still in academia, is I taught policy classes to social workers so that they had an understanding of what advocacy could look like and how damaging short-sighted policy could really be at the individual level. So with my new position with the United Church of Christ, I've actually been able to go back to CSW. And part of that is in thanks to a travel grant from the BVMs. Thank you very much. I was able to go last year, and some of you remember Beth Blissman, who is the UN director liaison. I really don't know what Beth's title is, but Beth works on UN and national and international level concerns for the Sisters of Loretto, who are directly supported financially by our dear BVMs. And Beth lives in Cleveland, strangely enough. And so we've been able to continue our friendship, learn from each other. And I helped her with some things last year at CSW. She is on the working group on girls, which the UN has all these different working groups. They have a very confusing structure, in my opinion. But Beth was involved with the working group on girls and got me involved in helping make some of that work happen. So I got to hang out with high school students who were visiting from some of the BVM and Loretto high schools who were at CSW. And one of the things I did was with Beth, we had a couple of sort of check-in from the UN nights where we were live on Zoom, and I bet some of you were there, checking in with Beth and me and some of the students that we were with, talking about what the main issues were at CSW at the time. And I did kind of a roving reporter thing and would just stop and ask people if we were waiting in line for something. I'd say, hey, do you mind recording? Could I record some things? Ask you some questions and record some things. So we had a delightful time. Unfortunately, our budget has been cut at the UCC, and so this year I'm not able to go to the Commission on the Status of Women. Beth called me the other day and was like, hey, nudge, nudge, nudge. I might, though, in April be attending a different event, which has to do with population, that the UCC's UN liaison is trying to get me involved with. So we'll see about that. One of the things that I learned a great deal about while I have been at Commission on the Status of Women, though, had to do with what is often referred to as period poverty or period hygiene needs. And I think it was my first CSW when I went to all these workshops where people all around the world were talking about how much school is missed by girls and young women around the globe because they do not have access to hygiene products to manage their periods. Now, I'm guessing some of you are familiar with the Red Basket Project in Dubuque, which was started by Ann McDonough to get, well, there are all these cute little red baskets in all the shelters and places where women seek assistance, and all of the school restrooms that are for women and girls at the colleges as well as the high school and middle schools. And it is free period products so that girls do not have to miss school because they can't afford the products that they need. Some people might think this is very weird, but one of the things I like to do when I travel is go to the grocery store because it helps me with vocabulary if I'm somewhere that English is not the first language. I also am fascinated by produce that grows in places that we can't get in Iowa or Ohio. I also have a fascination with hygiene products. And I have learned how incredibly blessed we are in the United States that there is such a great deal of research and development that goes into those products, because we have very nice, comfortable, not necessarily affordable, but well-designed products to help us manage periods. And I have seen by my casual research in other nations that is not always the case. Now, one of the other things that I wasn't so involved with when I was at Clark and taking students to CSW, but that I am aware of now that the UN also sponsors, is something called Thursdays in Black. It's an international awareness campaign that focuses on gender-based violence and increasing awareness of and advocating for systems that address the problems associated with gender-based violence. So Thursdays in Black you may hear about here and there. We are encouraged to wear black. We're encouraged to wear our buttons that say Thursdays in Black to help people become more aware of the problems associated with gender-based violence. Now, in the UCC, we support Thursdays in Black. We also have something called Break the Silence Sunday, which is related in that it is one Sunday a year. We provide materials for our congregations and we ask them to focus on lifting up the problem of gender-based violence, and that we learn to break the silence because people don't talk about it. And we have people in congregations who would not advocate for a person who is experiencing gender-based violence to get help for that or to address that in some way. So Thursdays in Black and Break the Silence Sunday are very much intertwined, and I have quite a few folks at the national level in the UCC that I work with to create those resources. We also create resources for International Women's Day, for Women's History Month. I have never taken a theology class in my life, and I find that I am asked to write liturgy at times. We have a fantastic liturgist at the national level, and she and I are actually meeting next week for the first time. We've been trying to get this done for months, where she has a doctorate in the liturgy. And Cheryl is going to sit down with me, and I've written liturgy for the programs that Cheryl runs, and she's always she's great. She gushes and says, "Thank you, that was so beautiful." Of course, what is she going to say? But she's going to do some work with me to help me understand a little bit more what kind of space we're trying to create with the liturgy that we provide. Let's see here. One of the other things that I work on a great deal, which should come as no surprise, is reproductive justice. Reproductive justice is a specific model or platform of working on equitable issues regarding reproduction in women. So the model that I like to use, and it's actually like people will talk about reproductive rights or bodily autonomy. This specific model is called reproductive justice. It was developed in the 1990s by an organization now known as Sister Song. This was a group of women of color who were sitting in some sort of health and safety meeting that Bill Clinton's administration was running. And it was all about trying to make sure that people had what they needed reproductively. And after the meeting that day, a bunch of women of color were probably out having a cocktail and commiserating about how a bunch of white guys, I mean, I love white guys, but they really need to turn over some of this work to the people that it truly affects. How they were sitting around making decisions about women's bodies. And this group of women said, this does not speak to us. This does not address our specific way that we interact with the world. And they started slowly developing this platform that has become reproductive justice, and it has 4 tenets. In learning more about this, I realized that the UCC resolutions that we vote on every other year and that we have hundreds of speak to supporting this particular model. So the tenets of this model are that women or people who can birth should have the right to have children, have the right to not have children, have the right to take care of their bodies and do what they want with them. And this one I really love, the right to raise any children they do have in safe and sustainable communities. And I think that's one of the keys. We can have all kinds of arguments about when does a fetus become a human. They don't want to have that argument. They want to give people the right to make decisions about their own bodies and have children or not have children. But this issue of raising them in safe and sustainable communities is huge to me and is what is missing from the conversation. So as I started pouring through the literally hundreds of UCC Synod resolutions, trying to make connections between this particular platform of justice and the resolutions that my community has voted on, and basically every time a resolution is voted on, that's a charge to the national staff to create some programming or respond in a certain way. I recognized how much that safe and sustainable communities part is missing from the larger conversation, and has to do with environmental racism, creating communities that aren't safe or sustainable, guns, and how unsafe and unsustainable communities become because of gun violence, drug violence. For me, that particular statement of the platform opened the door to a lot of work that we could be addressing. We have resolutions that specifically say things about gun violence, gang violence, drug-related violence, all gender-based violence, all the many kinds of violence that we experience. This particular piece had never been connected to women and girls issues in particular, or to a systemic condition in a way that we could address it. Now, I have very little funding and there's only one of me, so I still have not quite been able to figure out how to actually address this. But the door is open for me to start moving towards work around the reduction of guns that can allow so many bullets out at the same time. These high-speed weapons that nobody needs for hunting, which is often the NRA's statement is, well, guns are for hunting. We don't need those kinds of guns. We don't need semi-automatic weapons to go out and hunt deer or turkeys, as we were talking about earlier before everyone arrived. So I follow Sister Song's work closely. I follow the lead of women of color who are often most marginalized when it comes to talking about reproductive health, because to me, they are part of the least among us. And we need to address their needs as we address everyone else's. Now, I am part of a team that is, let me think, we have a new team name. We are the Gender and Sexuality Justice Ministries team. So I have a colleague who is originally from El Salvador, and her work is focused on LGBT. Oh, let me back up in case that's not familiar language. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, plus. So there's a lot of different letters that get put together there. But the Latin American descendant community of LGBTQ plus folks. My colleague Amy is responsible for managing a curriculum that the United Church of Christ shares with the Unitarian Universalists. And that is called Our Whole Lives. We often call it OWL, and we like to use cute owls on things to symbolize the OWL program. But it is a developmentally appropriate and accurate sexuality curriculum for kiddos starting in kindergarten up through the end of the human lifespan. There are 7 different curricula levels to help people understand who we are as sexual beings. We believe that God gave us sexuality and that we can use it responsibly. One of the main focuses is relationship and what does it mean to be in relationship with others. And that doesn't necessarily mean an intimate or physical relationship with people. Everyone we know we are in relationship with. And so how can we do that better? It is also very much focused on respect and responsibility. So we talk about the 3 R's of our whole lives. So my colleague Amy manages that in conjunction with a full-time staff member from the Unitarian Universalist Association. And then I have a team leader who focuses on the needs, well, kind of all of those areas, in addition to focusing a lot on trans rights. And that person runs, honestly, I don't quite understand it all yet, but a program that is an international program that supports people with HIV or AIDS and helping them get resources they need and promoting safety and health around that. So we are a team of 4. We are small but mighty. I absolutely adore my teammates and the work that we do. A couple things that I have started since I stepped into this role, as I really just tried to figure out what is happening with the UCC at the national level and what are our processes. I started an education series that is, I have conversations on Zoom with people and I record them. I make those conversations available. Occasionally we edit things because sometimes I swear. Oops. And I put together just a brief study guide. We make those available on a UCC platform called Frontline Faith, and people can enroll in different kinds of courses. Some of them charge, mine are all free. And these conversations have to do with the intersection of spirituality or religion and gender in some way, and they might be really kind of pop culture focused. One of the conversations that we had recently was about the movie Barbie that just really went like wildfire around the world. People were so unprepared for what was going to happen with that movie. So I have a conversation with some men and women about the themes that they saw in the Barbie film. And the study guide just talks a little bit about if you're going to use this in a congregation or with a group, how to make a group covenant so that everybody feels that they can participate in ways that are meaningful and respectful. And then I provide a few questions for folks to think about. One of the other topics that we did, oh, and I forgot to tell you the name of it. It's called Engendering Spirit. And it's really one of the things I'm very proud of. Engendering Spirit. I see some of you going, what? What is that again? Engendering Spirit. And if you want to see them, you can access frontlinefaith.org and search for Engendering Spirit. Another of the conversations is about expansive and inclusive language and how to use expansive language of that which is holy, but also how to use expansive language in ways that makes people feel welcome. One of them is about reproductive justice. One is a conversation with a good friend of mine from my doctoral program who is a body image researcher at University of Missouri and the author of a book called Fat Church. And we all read the book and we have a conversation with the author about Fat Church and how churches subtly and not so subtly tell some of us that we are welcome and some of us that we aren't. And how, again, to be a more welcoming congregation. Twice a year, I do have a book read. And so the next book that we're reading is called Girl/Friend Theology. And it's a theology of being women together. Y'all might like it. And I will be having a conversation that's recorded and made available with the author of that book. I am going to be having a conversation, I think it's next week. It might be the week after, with my colleague who is our liaison to the United Nations and one of the people who works with our partners in global ministries. And so we are going to talk about kind of what's going on around the world with regard to gender. I'm also working on scheduling with a couple of our global ministries people whose work is specific to Far East Asia and Southeast Asia. Well, basically all of Asia, they split it, around human trafficking, which I know some of you are very interested in, and that many of the sisters in the Dubuque area are focused on. So raising awareness, advocating against, addressing the needs of people who have been trafficked. I also then started a newsletter. You would think that that would not be that complicated of a deal, but good heavens, trying to get a newsletter created in a kind of not fast moving machine that we are and get it out to people can be so political. But my newsletter is called Talita Kum, which, if you are familiar with that particular passage, has to do with a girl who was unwell and Jesus told her to get up. And it often is translated as arise, girl. So in Talita Kum, I try to lift up some of the good work that women and girls are doing around the country in the UCC as far as their leadership, how they are doing good action in the community, and how they are practicing self-care and spirit. One of the things I'm seeing more of with the piece on action is that more and more congregations are working on what we're calling period pack projects. We work with Church World Service to put together a hygiene kit for people who menstruate, and those kits then are shared with folks who are in refugee camps, homeless shelters, people who are living somewhat of a transient and unstable existence, hopefully temporarily, and that provides them with ways to get their needs met with regard to their periods. So I'm putting together some of those, working with congregations in several parts of the country. Church World Service has done lots of different kits for different needs, and this is one of the newer ones that they have tried to organize, and it has been a huge success. We had an action project at our General Synod this past summer of 23, and we were able to put together and organize over 5,000 of these kits to disperse across the US for folks who are living in situations where they don't have a place to keep their stuff.
That's awesome.
They are houseless, basically, for whatever reason. So that is one thing. I'm just absolutely amazed at how many conversations I've had with men and boys about this, and there's no shame whatsoever. And so that's one of the things that our whole lives also focuses on as a curriculum, is that these are natural functions of being human, and we do not need to be ashamed of being human. We can celebrate the beauty of all of us being God's children.
Amen. Thank you, Sherry. Is there somebody who has a burning question that maybe there's a little curiosity about a specific program that she was talking about?
Oh, Karen's hand is up.
Ah, Karen, please go ahead.
I would be interested to know, you spoke of the program Our Whole Lives, which you zeroed in on the owl, with a series of, if I understand, 7 different curricular either modules or, anyway, my question is, how does one who is not part of UCC get a hold of that or take a look at how it might work in communities where we function?
That is an excellent question, Karen. Thank you for asking it. Let me give you a little bit more information about those 7 curriculum levels. One of the curriculum levels, and I believe it is 8 modules long, is for kindergartners and first graders. And people go, oh my gosh, you don't need to be talking about sex with 5-year-olds. We're talking about human sexuality, which is so much more than a physical act of sexual intimacy. And what is developmentally appropriate for kiddos that age is to learn the names of the real names of their body parts so that they can communicate if someone is harming them, and how to be safe. The next level is 4th through 6th grade, which I believe is, I can't remember, 10 or 12 sessions long. The middle school session is for 7th through 9th graders, and it is the most in-depth and longest because kids at that age level, I mean, that's when we got to get them, when they're like 15, 14 years old. It is a full school year of sessions, followed by a high school curriculum, which focuses more on what does it mean to make decisions and be in relationship with other people. There's a great session on how to break up kindly. I mean, good heavens. Can you imagine how helpful that would be in our planet? Then we have a young adult, sort of a middle adulthood, and then an older adulthood level, looking at sort of biological changes, as well as things that we experience as humans in certain stages of our life. So I don't want to sit here and start Googling because that makes me think that I'll mess things up as far as how we are talking to each other. But if you Googled, and maybe Susie, maybe you can do this and pop it in the chat. If you Google UCC space OWL, or you can go through the UU website, which is uua.org, and look up OWL. You will find a great deal of information, including research about Our Whole Lives curricula. And it won't so much tell you, though, as Karen asked, how you could get involved in taking one of these courses. It does tell you, though, how to get facilitators trained so that you could offer one yourselves or develop something in the Dubuque community. I honestly don't know if any of the UCC congregations or the UUA are doing anything with it in the Dubuque area. Iowa does seem to have quite a few trainings, though, and I know that in Ames and Iowa City, and I think even in Cedar Rapids, they have different Our Whole Lives curricula that are being offered. It certainly is something that is very useful on college campuses to use the young adult curricula because it really focuses on how to make decisions based on your values and how to kind of prepare for becoming an adult. And what does that mean to step into more of a long-term relationship with someone?
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Is that okay? Great, good. I was just going to ask if that was enough info. Pat, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, Sherry, this is all new information, what you're accomplishing. It's just outstanding. I was wondering about partnership. How do you, is there a way that like the BVMs, maybe we are in partnership with you, with this, or how can a congregation become partners with you? Because I know you mentioned at the beginning you didn't have funds to go to the one meeting. So, my question is basically about what is the avenue to partnership to broaden us to affiliate maybe more directly with what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, wow. Pat, thank you. That's over my pay grade. I could certainly, though, figure out who to talk to make that happen. We are doing an organizational restructuring at the national ministries level. And so we have a new CEO type person who would be called our president and general minister. So she's new. She's actually the first African American woman to lead a ministry in the United States, and we're pretty excited about her. Then below her, we have all new people at the associate general minister level as well. And we've done some moving around of teams. But I certainly, so my new associate general minister just started last week, and I bet she'd love to have this conversation. But I like where you're thinking. I like how you're thinking about that. Let's carry that conversation forward if you don't mind. Thanks, Pat. Susan?
I don't know a lot about, I know something about the UCC that it tends to be very progressive and, I'm wondering how you handle the political currents of the day that certainly would not support your work.
That's a great question and something that we think about almost constantly. We have an advocacy office in DC that helps guide us in national policy work. And they are instrumental in helping us determine what we want to support as an organization or what we want to ask our congregations to support. Not just as individual members of their communities, but as a congregation. What will a congregation sign on to for their community to say, we stand together with these folks whom you are attacking politically or through policy. So we have them at the national level. We don't have people focusing on every state, but in the instance of my work, as far as women and gender focused work, I have been to Columbus and I have stood with folks who were under attack politically to be present as a witness to what they are asking for. And yes, we are a very progressive Christian community that feels that we are all God's beautiful children, made in God's amazing image, and that we all are worthy of dignity and love. We find that we attract quite a few people from the LGBTQ plus community. We are not perfect by any means, and we have quite a few UCC congregations across the country that would not stand with our LGBTQ brethren and sisters. We have a program that we call Open and Affirming Congregations, and it's an educational process and reflective process that congregations can utilize to decide if they want to declare themselves as open and affirming, and that means that they will publicly welcome people of all identities of the LGBTQ plus rainbow spectrum, and that they have learned how to incorporate folks into their community in a way that celebrates who they are, not just a tolerance of, but a celebration with. So I try to keep people aware of what is going on around reproductive justice focused issues. But again, I am one person in a very large nation that is incredibly diverse and has a lot of policy focused at the people that my team focuses on. I've had female ministers in our organization say, you know, that's great, Sherry, we love the work you're doing. Can you help us figure out how to break through the stained glass ceiling? Which was language I had not heard before. But you're all familiar with it, with the diocese being in Dubuque. That level that you cannot surpass because you're women. We find that women pastors don't get the big, well-functioning churches. They get small rural churches that they are then asked to retire, or hospice churches almost. The church is dying. They get dysfunctional churches and they get paid less across the board. So we have our own work internally that we need to address as well. Susie, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I just had a question. I'd like to circle back a little bit. It's such a powerful image of the stained glass church. That was very cool. So I kind of almost hate to circle back a little bit, but to go back to that topic of preparing a congregation to not only just say they're welcoming and affirming, but actually be functionally welcoming and affirming is such a transcendent, important topic, no matter how you're choosing to focus your inclusivity. I was part of a congregation that chose to be ethnically diverse. And we spent about 5 years bringing the rest of the congregation, more so than just the leaders of the board. Well, actually, it was first getting some of the board members together to work with the rest of the board members before we could then work on the congregation. So there is that staggered sort of development work that goes beyond just making a decision. So it's really awesome that you're getting to be part of that in this topic of gender inclusivity. So that's very cool.
Well, and Susie, since you brought it up, we have a separate organization that kind of spun out of the UCC called ONA, Open and Affirming, where they have a new director. And I think we have about 1,800 of our congregations across the US that have gone through the ONA process. And she is actually having them all recertify, because some of them did this 30 years ago. And a heck of a lot has changed around family structure, around law that allows people to live as who they are, what is socially and culturally acceptable. And as you brought up, Susie, you went through this around an ethnic and racial process to become more expansive and inclusive. We have a program focused on anti-racism called Join the Movement. And I think that that is one of the biggest hurdles that we continue to experience nationwide is who are we going to be, and how are we going to be that together with the amazing diversity of humanity that we have. It takes a lot of work to get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to whisper this in your ears. Okay, here we go. I gotta get my face off of there. It's distracting. Okay, Crone Mother Blessing. Bless the stars pirouetting above the rain clouds tucked under the blue, forever blue sky, and the rain drenching our parched world, water of rivers, water of waves, teacups and tears. Bless the baby's cry, announcing their place in the swirl of life. Bless the stranger's gaze, may it harbor friendship and acceptance given and received. Bless true friends, may we continue traveling roads, winding up mountains and through ancient forests, searching, seeking. Bless the hard times that give us grit and resolve we did not know we possessed. Bless the turbulence that descends on our heads even when we are ever watchful. May we be protected. May we be supported. May we be safe. Bless the conquered and the conquerors, that they may cease their fire, that our leaders, ignorant, greedy, malevolent, be struck by a bolt of enlightenment. Bless the hands who bring food, who bring water, who bring solace. May their families be blessed. May your children and future children be blessed. May the ancestors bless you with always having enough to nourish and share. May we be blessed with a strong heart. May we be blessed with an open-heartedness where love in all its fractal forms pulses until it doesn't. May it be so. May it be so. And so it is.
Okay, how can I close this wonderful time together? May it be so, may it be so. And my dear sisters and friends, so it is. Thank you, Sherry and Chris. You have brightened our world in this moment. And it is in the moment that I believe energy is poured forth. So we will be blessed by your gracious gifts to us today. And I bless you, Sherry, in your work. Each day, know that we carry you in our hearts. And you too, Chris, that your words and poetry continue to move us to new ways of being together in this world.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being with us.